I think I'm going to start a charity. Oh, hi Renee, what's the charity about? I just feel called by God to help starving children. In Africa? In Africa, yeah. Lord help us.
Oh, so fabulous.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel once again. It's your girl Dumebi. If this is your first time coming across my channel, you're welcome. I do hope you decide to subscribe, and if you are a returning subscriber, you guys know that I love you. It's so good to have you here. Welcome back. So first of all, my usual disclaimer, this video is strictly for educational purposes. Please do not go searching out the people that I talk about in this video. Don't send them any form of hate comment, threats, or violence. This channel does not support any of that. So today's topic, I've not covered anything this appalling because it has to do with innocent lives being cut short out of the negligence and wickedness of a particular person, in my own opinion. So just in case you haven't heard, because everyone has been talking about it, HBO is releasing a documentary called Savior Complex, which is basically going to be about an American woman called Renee Back, who went to Africa, specifically the country of Uganda, for missionary work, medical missionary particularly, and then opened up a clinic and ended up UnALIVing over 100 children and got away with it. You guys, I mean got away with it. No repercussions. She's currently back in the US living her life, and it's unbelievable. You know what, you guys, I'm just going to go right ahead and play some of the videos so that you guys can understand what I'm going on and on about.
I think some of the most wild accusations that were made about me is that I 800 children. I was medically experimenting on children compared to Adolf Hitler, soon to be part of the KKK. It's kind of like where to begin, you know? What is feeling called by God? What is that like? Baby John! I just started to see malnutrition everywhere. So many children came seeking help. We decided to make a malnutrition rehab center.
She would do things as if she was a medical personnel.
She was not qualified to do this.
So we went to the U.S. Embassy.
Charges could be brought against Renee.
So many wild accusations.
We need to talk about the white savior complex.
I do believe we saved lives, hundreds and hundreds of them.
Renee is being put up as an angel.
People back in America think she's awesome. They're giving her money.
Angels like Renee bring death on the continent. Let he who has never sinned be the first to pick a stone and throw at Renee.
So much of the white savior complex is the legacy of colonialism.
I feel like I've taken the hit for every single white person in Uganda.
Justice means so many things to so many people.
Tonight at 6, a Bedford woman is facing disturbing allegations about her nonprofit in Uganda. Renee Bach is being sued for allegedly operating a medical facility without a license, leading to the death of hundreds of children.
We got our hands on this copy of the lawsuit. The Women's Pro Bono Initiative and two mothers filed this civil suit in a court in Uganda, saying actions by the group, the nonprofit, serving his children, led to the deaths of their children. The allegations stirring up a firestorm of criticism, and tonight, the woman taking the heat is firing back.
Our focus is malnutrition, so we do preventative care programs and then also treatment services.
Less than 2 years ago, we sat down with Renee Bach to talk about her nonprofit serving his children. Its mission, fighting malnutrition in Uganda, clearly outlined on its website.
When mothers come to serving his children, many of them have lost hope.
But now some are blaming the organization not just for losing hope, but losing lives. Two mothers and the Women's Pro Bono Initiative suing Bach and serving his children. Court documents say they were led to believe Bach was a medical doctor, claiming she unlawfully practiced medicine and offered medical services to unsuspecting vulnerable children. In these now deleted images, she's seen wearing a stethoscope, administering care to children. The plaintiffs say they only learned after their children died Bach had no proper medical training.
And what's interesting is at some point in 2013, she finally hires 2 doctors. Before it was just a couple of nurses that were sometimes there and sometimes not there, okay? And the death rate drops to 10%. Well, it turns out having doctors makes a big difference. Of course it does.
Now, this piece of shit is Renee Bach. And Renee Bach decided to raise money through donations and go to Uganda and open up a medical center. Here's the thing. Renee Bach was 19 when she had this decision, and by the time she got to Uganda, she was just 20. She still had no medical training, but yet and still she passed herself off and was able to run a clinic from 2010 to 2015 where 105 children died. Fueled by money raised from her evangelical church back in Bedford, Virginia, Renee Bach set up shop in one of the poorest areas of Jinja, Uganda. And there, for 5 years, she treated children with no medical degree. Not only did she not have a medical degree, but there was no doctor at the center that she administered. In 2019, Ray Bach was sued by the Ugandan government on behalf of the mothers of the 105 children recorded to have died while in her care. Now, they settled out of court in 2020 at $9,500 per child, which came to a total of $997,500, just a little under $1 million. But this travesty did not stop there, because HBO is doing the following. Understand this, that Ray Bach has not served 1 day in jail. And she paid $997,500 to 105 families for the loss of their children without admitting any liability. This is why we say keep your white savior ass out of volunteer work on the continent. How much you think HBO is paying her for this 3-part documentary to tell her side of the story? Religion, power, and death of black children. Yeah.
You see, when I saw these videos circulating on TikTok, because I don't have HBO, it doesn't even matter, because it's not like I'm going to try to watch the documentary. Lord knows I'm not interested in hearing her side of the story. And from everything that I've heard, it's not even a documentary that I would recommend any black person watch, because you're probably going to be pissed off. And also for the fact that she's telling it from her point of view and not the point of view of the victimized and oppressed people, the family of the people that she unalived their children. I am not interested in hearing anything she has to say. But from the accounts of people who seem to have watched it, they say she's telling the story from her side and trying to make herself look like the victim because her intentions were good, but maybe she just did not execute it very well. And then the actual opening line of the documentary itself, where she talks about the allegations leveled against me, that is not someone who sounds like they're interested in taking accountability. That is not someone who is contrite for what they have done. That definitely doesn't sound like someone who is ready to even own up to their actions and their inactions and make things right. Of course, I don't even think you can make things right in this situation, but at least justice deserves to be served. A lot of black people, both those on the continent and out of the continent, have lent their voice to talking about this situation. Black people generally are not having this, because whether we like it or not, there is a racial undertone to this whole thing, because we know that this story is based off of white savior complex that these people feel they have, that they just wake up one morning and decide they heard the voice of God and go into Africa and perpetrate evil. And sadly, it is also how trusting our people are once they see a person with palm-colored skin. We get so trusting, we believe everything that they say, and we entrust the lives of our children into the hands of a person who had no medical training. I cannot believe this. I'm just going to go right ahead and play some commentary and stitches to this whole situation.
Just want to apologize in advance because this is going to be an angry, chaotic video. Like everybody else, I have just seen this trailer by HBO, and because I don't want you people to go looking for this thing, I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to know about this case. Now, it's not bad enough that we have hundreds of African children who have died at her hands, but now we must also suffer through rewritten accounts of history by people who have obvious white savior complexes. Here is 2010 when a young white American woman called Renee Bach decides that she has heard the voice of God, and the voice of God has told her that she needs to go all the way to Uganda and set up a medical treatment center where she will cater for malnourished Ugandan children. She does this. She goes to Uganda, to the city of Jinja specifically, and decides to set up a medical center where she was feeding young children who would come in. She would operate on young babies who needed medical attention, and essentially would set up herself as part of the American volunteer community that was taking root in Jinja at the time. She would operate on very young children. Parents would come in holding their babies, asking her to help. And in that community, they referred to her as the white doctor. Gag here is Renee actually wasn't a doctor. In fact, she wasn't qualified to do anything. Babes was a 19-year-old high school graduate, and people were donating money to her because they liked the idea of her going to help the poor, helpless children of Africa. Of course, as you would expect, children started dying under her care. Hundreds of children at that fact. And what did she do? Absolutely nothing. She did not care. She continued to operate on them, and there was one account where had a very negative reaction to the operation that Renee had performed on this young baby. And do you know what they did? She started Googling. She started Googling the reactions of this child. And she was saying that, oh, when they start wheezing and swelling, this is what it means. And now HBO have decided to make a documentary about this entire situation by sanitizing Renee and making her out to seem like an endearing victim of this entire scenario. You come into our countries, you enter our homes, you kill our children, and now you want to profit off of our dead bodies. And the worst part about it is the way HBO have phrased this documentary, trying to make it seem like, oh, this is a socio-political pop culture debate. Who was right, who was wrong? Why is it always that whenever the victims are Black or African or indigenous peoples, all of a sudden there's room for debate? I'm sorry, but you don't get to do that. You don't get to debate our livelihoods and our bodies. This is an appeal to everybody who comes across this video. Please, please do not watch the HBO documentary. Give it 1 star and keep it moving. Instead, you should check out these stories published by Ugandan journalists. They'll give you a much more accurate representation of exactly what happened. You all need to remember that Renee Bach is a child serial killer who does not need to be profiting off of her crimes. She needs to be in jail. These are the people that you should be listening to instead.
There is an HBO documentary that is coming out in regards to Renee Bach and her murderous rampage over in Uganda. I refuse to just call her Renee Bach. Whenever we refer to her, she needs to be referred to as a mass murderer, the angel of death, the murderer of children, something of the sort. Listen, for those of you who do not want to support the documentary because of HBO, there is a podcast. Let me show you what it looks like. This is the podcast. It's called The Missionary, and it's going over all of the things that this journalist did an investigative report into Renee Bach and what she was doing over in Uganda. You'll get all of the tea over here. This is how I found out she didn't even have a high school diploma. And she went over there performing medical procedures, calling herself medically treating Ugandans. And she was able to leave Uganda, go back to the United States, and live happily ever after. No, she needs to forever be referred to as the angel of death or a mass murderer of children, something.
This is one of the reasons I don't trust religion. Because someone wakes up and says, God told me. And then when you hear God told me, some people are unable to challenge it. The things that have been done in the name of God has told me, the atrocities that have been committed on our continent by different people, even light-skinned people and dark-skinned people.
Angels like Renee bring death on the continent. Let he who has never seen be the first biggest and throw at Irene.
Yes, there's white savior complex, but see that other one, Stockholm syndrome. How are people crying out for justice to be done on their kids who have been killed, and somebody who is old enough to be my grandmother is making that kind of comment? Like, religion is a disastrous nonsense. Religion shuts the mind. You see what Christianity has done on the continent of Africa? This is horrible. This is extremely, extremely horrible. Some people will still come and make excuses. Oh no, it's just some people. Christianity, don't throw away the baby with the bathwater. The most dangerous set of Christians are those who say, God told me. See those ones? If you're non-Christian, run away from those people. Even if you're Christian, run away from anybody that says God told me. Those people are dangerous people. Those people are disastrous. They don't have accountability. They are entitled. They are narcissists. They don't have any kind of remorse, because anything their mind tells them, they'll say it's God. Those people are dangerous. They are delusional and they are deluded.
An HBO docu-series coming out about the white savior complex, about a white missionary who goes to lands where brown and black children are and help them out. That sounds just like my past, and I don't want to talk about that. You might have heard about Renee Bach a couple years ago, because she ended up in Uganda and taking care of malnourished babies, and about 800 of them passed away. I was also a white savior to a couple of countries, and I want to talk to you about the realities of what mission work is and a little bit of what I think about this series coming out. The difference between me and Renee Bach is that the internet was not accessible when I was looking into all this, and with all the information out there about the harms of missionary work, I don't know how she could not have known how anything would be perceived and how she was internalizing her own saviorism. When you're doing missionary work, and sometimes when you're doing church work, you are doing things outside of your capabilities and any formal training. So when I was in Haiti, a lot of us were working at an orphanage for babies with tuberculosis, giving them medicines and polio drops. I had no medical training, and the person overseeing us was just a male nurse who had built this orphanage. The whole saying in missionary work is that God requires of you to do bigger things than you thought you could ever do. And so there is this kind of, prophetic fulfillment when you're outside of your comfort zone because you feel you're the only one that can do this stuff. And I'll tell you, sometimes you really fucking are. But not in this day and age.
In the latest Chronicles of Caucasity, we have this story. Imagine being in your early 20s with no college coursework, no medical licenses or medical training, and going to Uganda and starting a health center for malnourished children. That's what Renee Bach did. And from 2010 to 2015, a little over 900 children came into her center, and 105 of them died. The care provided at this clinic was so poor that in 2011, 20%, meaning 1 out of every 5 children who came into the clinic, died. In 2012, it was slightly better at 18%. The rate only went down to 10% in 2013 when she finally hired 2 physicians. If you're wondering if she's in prison now, the answer is no. If you're wondering if she's had to pay significant penalties, again, the answer is no. Even as a physician who's not a pediatrician, I would not feel comfortable caring for these children. But Bach, with no medical training, felt comfortable starting IVs, giving hydration, and in some cases, supposedly, allegedly, reportedly, giving them blood transfusions. As reported by NPR, in one case, a 9-month-old baby was given a blood transfusion and had a severe reaction, which Bach didn't recognize because when she Googled reactions, she came up with rashes, and this child didn't have a rash. She was having an anaphylactic reaction with severe swelling. It was the nurse who had observed that specific incident who eventually reported the clinic to the Ugandan health authorities in 2015 and got the clinic shut down. Eventually, 2 families brought a civil suit against her in Uganda, and the suit was settled out of court. She reportedly paid each family $9,500. At the risk of getting a lot of comments like, why are you bringing race into this? Just imagine for a moment that a Ugandan high school graduate had come to the United States with no healthcare qualifications and set up a clinic for malnourished children, and over the course of 6 years, over 100 children died in that person's care. Do you really think that person would be getting an HBO documentary? I think we all know that person would be sitting in prison. If this isn't a great example of white privilege, I don't know what is.
So a lot of black people are calling for people to boycott the series, and some are even signing a petition to have it removed. So I personally have some questions. How does a 19 to 20-year-old high school graduate leave her country, go to Africa, go to Uganda, and open a center without even being certified, without being checked to make sure that she had the proper training and certification? I do not understand. I also heard that she ran this clinic, or in quote center, from the period of 2010 to 2015. So we're talking at least 5 years. So was there no regulatory body that had to go and check to know like if they were up to standards, to know how the children there were doing? Like, I don't want this to sound like victim blaming, but it just goes to show the level of trust our people still have, our people here in Africa still have for palm-colored people. It is one thing to understand that maybe a lot of these people from the Western countries have better technology and are more advanced, and then you trust them on that capacity. But I don't think that is it here, because I believe that our people just believe that these palm-colored people are a better quality of human beings than even black people, because there's definitely a bias, there's definitely a complex where we trust these people so easily without even having to check their certification, where we trust these people so easily, even though she had unalived children, 10, 20, 30. We keep trusting. Her records should have spoken for her. Why did so many kids have to be unalived before this whole thing was put to an end? And apparently from all the videos that I've seen, the only reason she was actually called out and exposed was because a nurse had seen her giving the child blood transfusion and realized that the child was having a reaction and reported her to the Ugandan authorities. So who knows how much longer this could have gone on if this nurse had not reported her. It actually looks like people were not even looking at her track record of the number of children that did not make it out of there alive. They kept trusting, which is where I'm actually disappointed. It is so sad that so many children had to go. And at the end of the day, how was she able to get out of Uganda? Apparently she was sued by 2 parents, but she settled them out of court and went back to America and just went about her life. And it is the audacity for me. It is the audacity of a 19, 20-year-old to go to a country and do this whole thing to innocent kids. It is the audacity of her documenting everything she was doing, playing doctor, having pictures of her taking, carrying out medical procedures, blogging and vlogging so that she could raise money from her church. Because for you to have done that, you should have definitely known that that is evidence that could have been used against you in courts. So the fact that she didn't care and she was documenting these things, it screams audacity to me. It is also the audacity that with everything being done, she saw no issue in actually participating and doing a whole documentary when you should be somewhere hiding your face in shame. So the fact that you came out to still even do a documentary, to me, it feels like you see nothing wrong in what you did and you don't even think there are going to be any repercussions, because as far as I'm concerned, a lot of people did not even know about this. But with this documentary now, everybody knows about it. So you had the audacity to not even care about what could possibly happen as a repercussion from this documentary. It is the audacity for me. And one painful thing I being a Christian, it is things like this that makes us even question how this whole thing works. How do people claim to hear from God? How does the voice of God tell you to go into a country and decide to play the white savior, decide to play doctor, knowing fully well that you do not have any experience or certification? She said she was relying on the Bible and her gut feeling and then Googling symptoms to diagnose children. Like, you guys, you can't make this up. Now, you cannot tell me that it is ignorance because she was young, she didn't know what she was doing. No, I actually believe you have to be a certain level of evil and inhuman to do that. How do you go to bed at night knowing that a child lost their life under your care, and you know fully well that you had no training to be able to save that child, and you did it time and time again until we have over 100 children as your victims? What is the difference between this woman and Jeffrey Dahmer at this point? Someone please tell me. Anyway, you guys let me know what you think about this whole situation in the comment section. I am absolutely disgusted. I will not be watching that documentary. I do not recommend you guys to watch it. If you want to have any form of interaction with that documentary, I think you should be reporting it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.